Jesus.
Oh boy.
God.
It's really happening. Oh, hello. Are we on?
I have epilepsy.
Let's
I have
do
epilepsy,
this.
by the way. No, I don't.
Hello, welcome to Secret Origins with Mark Bagley. My name's Albert Ching.
Stop swiveling.
I'm already doing it. I'm doing exactly what I was told not to do literally 10 seconds into this. So it's going well so far. My name's Albert Ching. I'm senior editor at Comic Resources. That's the website. That's that logo right there. Read it and enjoy it, please. Right now we're just talking to probably, I would say, one of the most prolific superhero artists of our time. I think that's fair to say. If not the.
One?
The most prolific superhero artist of our time, Mark Bagley. You know him from 111 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man, uninterrupted. 111.
114.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think.
Maybe
111.
Thunderbolts, New Warriors,
Amazing
Hulk,
Spider-Man.
Amazing Spider-Man,
Fantastic
Four, very recently.
GLA, Batman,
Trinity,
which nobody read. But I worked my ass off on. That's Visionaries.
Yeah.
Strike Force Mortuary. I can keep going.
Well, we'll get to all of it.
No, we won't.
All of it. We'll talk about everything, starting from his first comic to his last one. This is going to be a 17-hour panel, so I hope you guys are ready. Well, let's start at the beginning, because this is Secret Origins,
You're
right?
swiveling. Stop swiveling. Okay. Secret Origins.
Secret
okay.
Origins. And one thing I think that's interesting is, I hear from a lot of artists who are big, and they're kind of self-taught, not formally trained. But you did have some art training, right? You went to
some
art
art
school.
training.
Yeah.
I joined the Army to afford art school. I got 5 brothers. They're all jocks. I got a twin brother who I took to see the Thor movie. Took him to see the Thor movie with my wife. And he comes out of the movie, and Mike is like this big, and he talks like this, and he says, I said, so did you like the movie, Mike? He goes, yeah, I liked it. I said, no, it's good. He says, I got a question, though. I said, yeah. He says, so after the movie, the guy with the hammer, he goes home. It's like, the guy with the hammer?
The guy with
This is
the
my
hammer,
twin
yeah.
brother, so
Wow.
that's just how into comics my family was.
Yeah.
So I joined the Army for art school, and then I did construction for 3 years and got 98 stitches in my thigh from a skill saw and realized I didn't need to be doing construction. And when I was 27, I was just about ready to go. I'm done trying to get in because I wasn't going to be, an old guy walking around with an old portfolio going, look at my stuff.
Right.
It wasn't going to happen. I was working for Lockheed and had a wife and a kid in the house. And Marvel Trial Contest happened, and I got first place, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I think that's like a very unique path, right? It's a very specific way, because people probably ask, oh, how do I break into comics? And
I have a specific thing.
You had a specific thing that doesn't exist anymore.
It's a cool story.
It only really worked for you.
It's a cool story because the book came out. It was $20 for this big full-size.
Called the Marvel Tryout.
The Marvel
book, right?
Tryout, and I thought it was a gimmick to take money from kids, and I was a little bit burnt out with doing comics, and I wasn't going to do it, And the guy at the book, so the owner, Cliff Biggers, is a friend of mine, and he publishes Comic Shop News as well, and he gave me the book. He said, look, if you don't do this, you'll hate yourself. And I won first place out of 19,000 people, which 18,900 of were 12-year-olds.
Right.
Because it was a gimmick to take money from kids. But it got me a trip to New York City, and I met all the editors, and they gave me a one-shot thing here and a one-shot thing there. And a year and a half later, living on 3 hours of sleep a night, Lockheed was laying off. I hung on just long enough to buy a new house, and quit the next day, and been doing comics ever since.
What did the tryout book consist of? Do you remember? Do you have
Oh yeah.
memory? I'm sure
in fact, I got a copy of it for
Yeah.
Christmas from my daughter recently because I hadn't had the thing. It was full-size pages, and it started out with a full story, like colored, inked, lettered, the whole 9 yards. And then if you wanted to be, the first part that dropped out, I think, was the colors, because if you wanted to be a color, you colored that 4 or 5 pages that were there, and then they dropped out the lettering maybe. Then you lettered the next 4 or 5 pages, and then it went all the way down to just blank paper where there was a little. It basically ended the book ended at a cliffhanger with Spider-Man and Doc Ock, and the writer had to finish, get him out of that trouble because he was, it was a cliffhanger. And
So it was a Spider-Man thing. So
it was a Spider-Man thing.
very prophetic for.
Never got published, thankfully.
Was it normal like comic editions, or was it?
Oh
like
yeah, it was normal comic book.
Okay.
Well, no, it was full-size comic pages like we work on.
Yeah. Excellent.
So you know anything about this stuff?
For the benefit of the crowd.
So anyway, and that's what got me into comics.
Excellent. And
So the moral of that story is, if you get your shot, you take it. You got something you really want to do, you be ready for it, and you take your shot. And because to this day, I don't know what the hell I'd be doing for a living because I suck at everything else.
And even with something like that, that seems like a completely ridiculous odds. Still take those chances, right?
Yeah, it is. Eric Larson came in second. I'm not kidding. He actually tells me he came in second. So, you know, and look how much he sucks. So.
And obviously after that, it wasn't like immediately you were on huge books. You had quite a few of the more sort of obscure, random Marvel books
started
before
out
you.
Visionaries, which is a toy tie-in contest. I mean, before a lot of you kids were born, I mean, it was like little toys with holograms, and they had different armor, and they turned into animals. It had a really zippy cartoon show, and lasted about 2 seconds. But it was good training, and nobody read it, but it was a big teen book, so I had to try to tell these little stupid stories. And I did that for a while, and then a book called Strike Force Mortori came available, and that was sort of my first toe into like actual real grown-up comics.
Yeah.
And the last issue of Visionaries, they said you can start Strike Force like tomorrow because it was late already. I did 7 pages in one night. I just crapped this stuff out as fast as I could because I wanted to get it over with. It was like not good, but and then I went to Strike Force Mortori and continued crapping stuff out for a while. No.
Well, that's a well-remembered title.
Oh yeah.
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 Compared to Visionary, certainly.
Right. Yeah.
And I think probably the first big thing that obviously a lot of people remember you for is New Warriors.
Right.
And that's a book that, even though I think it was very of its time, it's obviously still very fondly remembered, and it keeps getting revisited. In fact, very recently has been.
Signing these damn omnibuses that will break your wrist picking them up, and it was a great opportunity. It was funny because I was doing comics. I wasn't getting the kind of work I thought I hoped I should be getting, to get into really mainstream comics. My goal was Spider-Man. My goal was to like be the Mark Bagley, whatever. But I came home. My wife, I'd making enough money for my wife to actually quit work. We had one child. We thought we could, because comics back then, it was, it's a tradesman's job. No, I never thought I'd make any money at it, and I just loved to do it. And so I was working my ass off. I was working 80 hours a week and doing probably 3 pages a day, and I wasn't getting to work. And I came home from San Diego Con, where I found out Eric Larson had gotten Amazing Spider-Man instead of me. I thought I was due for it. No, actually, this is before. This is a different story. I'm sorry. But anyway, I realized I needed to slow down my output and spend more time on my work. My wife had just quit work like a month before. She looked at me like I was an idiot, like, great timing, moron, So we ate bread and sandwiches for a while, and really soon the work picked up. The quality of my work picked up, I think. And Fabian Nicieza, who's the writer on New Warriors, he took my work to Danny Fingerhoff, the editor, and said, look at what he's doing now. And that got my foot in the door. And did that for, 30 issues or something like that?
About like 2.5 years, yeah.
So, and then that led into Amazing Spider-Man, which is my dream gig.
So obviously you've been talking about how much you liked Spider-Man even before you started working on it. So was Spider-Man always your favorite character as a kid? Was that always?
As a kid. Depending on who was drawing him,
Sure.
I wasn't a huge fan of Ross Andrew, who was a hell of a draftsman, but I just didn't like the way he did figures and faces and things. But Gil Kane and John Romita and those guys, that was like amazing stuff. When Gwen Stacy died, I cried. I was 16 years old. But that was sort of the goal, and that was my idea that, I'd really arrived as a Marvel comic artist. I was doing a flagship title,
Yeah.
And luckily, it was also right around the collector's boom in the 90s where, my pittance of a paycheck turned into like rock and roll money, and for a while. And the Image guys were doing all their thing and tried to take me away, and I was like, no, I'm happy as a clam doing Spider-Man. So did him for quite a while.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And obviously you drew a lot of big Spider-Man stories in that time, part of Maximum Carnage.
Venom.
Which I'm sure we're all very familiar with, right?
They say in France, Carnage.
Carnage,
They really do, Carnage. And
Maximum
they say Spider-Man.
Spider-Man?
Spider-Man, yes.
That's just wrong. It just feels bad coming out of the mouth, right?
Spider-Man, Ménage à trois es Spider-Man. No.
And you were the first Carnage artist.
Yeah, I designed him.
Yeah.
I just, and if I'd have known I'd be drawing him this long, this many years later, I'd have made him easier to draw. He's a pain. I hate drawing him. He's a pain in the ass. But,
You were making life hard on future Mark Bagley.
God. But he's been very, very good for me. So
yeah.
It's just creepy. To this day, I have people bring comic to me, and there's this panel where Carnage tosses this baby over a balcony. And Venom and Spider-Man both jump to save the baby. And I think, if I recall correctly, Venom ends up saving the baby. But I have had, to this day, I have people come to me, sign that panel. I'm like, Jesus. Okay, fine. What
something about
next,
that, I guess, really
you know?
resonates. I
Now
don't know.
now you want your topless She-Hulk next, you know, that sort of thing.
So since that was such a big period for you, that period on Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man book, is anything specifically stand out to you still that you're very proud of, that you look back on as being especially cool?
The Clone Saga just was rocking.
I loved the Clone Saga as a fan.
It was a nightmare. It was such a great. It was such a. It really was the back of our minds when we all got together for this big meeting and came up with the clone idea. It was going to be this short, concise thing.
Not necessarily
a
saga.
And it was going to end up that the clone had been Spider-Man all this time, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what
was
the
it
status
gonna
quo
be,
was
it
for a while.
Big F you to Todd, to be honest with you. That was in the back of our little minds. And it just turned into this nightmare of, you know, taking 3 years, whatever it took, with 4 books and God, how many issues. And I wanted to shoot myself by the time it was over with. I mean, when I started doing maximum clonage and, you know, Night of 1,000 Clones, and God, I remember now, it's coming back to me now. I'm sweating.
Oh, boy. This is like PTSD right here. This is
Superstar. Anyway.
Did you design the Scarlet Spider costume?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
That was Tom Lyle, who now teaches at Savannah College of Art and Design.
Long-time Web of Spider-Man artist.
Yeah, they actually, like, Danny's like, we want a costume that doesn't look like a costume, which totally was like, what the hell? And so we all submitted ideas for that costume. I designed, like, the original Kane and a bunch of the guys that were involved in that. Yeah. I was sort of the lead guy on that, but they gave Tom. I did a bunch of designs that actually worked out pretty good. So, you know, in fact, the Spider-Girl costume that Ron Frenz used for years in that comic, that was in the Amazing Spider. That was originally a design.
Ben Reilly's Spider-Man costume.
I designed that one. So, you know, people hate that costume. I kind of liked it. So,
I like it.
Screw them, you know.
And now Kane is Scarlet Spider, and he's in the New Warriors. Isn't that weird?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I don't read as many comics as I used to, you know, but I tend to pick them up for who's art, and I read Brian's stuff, Brian Bendis' stuff. But
yeah, I would think you would have to, right?
No, I don't have
guilt
to.
trip you if you
didn't. I
didn't
don't have to do anything, you know.
Well, as a fan, I have such specific memories of those comics. One of the first ones I really remember being pulled to on the stands was Amazing Spider-Man number 388. It had a foil cover. It was the conclusion of the life theft 3-part story with the saga of Peter Parker's robot parents, which I'm sure you all remember, like every single detail of that story.
Oh, is that the one with the robot parents? And
the robot parents and the Vulture became young.
He's like got the dad in his
and he's like crying out the loss of his robot parents.
It's the ugliest cover I ever drew in my life.
It was such an influential cover on me as a young man.
God, it's an awful drawing.
I loved it.
It really is. It's such an awful drawing. I hated that storyline. I hated it every second of it.
The Vulture was young and he had hair.
I hated that.
He stole the life from the robot parents.
Here. Oh, it was so awful. You know, it's like the thing is, Danny Fingeroth was the editor, and I love Danny. We're really good friends, but I was like, I wanted to strangle him. I did, you know. It's like Albert, the bad guy, Alistair Smythe, whatever the hell his name was. He had like a robot body. So I thought it'd be cool at one point in the storyline where he like had these 8 spidery robot legs as his conveyance. Oh, we can't do that. That's not realistic enough. It's a comic book. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So
you got to keep it grounded in the story about robot parents.
We got him in a fancy scientific rolling wheelchair. I'm like, oh boy, that's exciting. So.
Another thing I have a very specific fond memories from that era are the Spider-Man trading cards that you drew, where every 9 of them like formed a big picture.
I worked my ass off on those.
I bet.
That was fun.
I bet.
And that got me Ultimate Spider-Man in the end. Because Bill Jemas, I didn't even remember this, know this.
Okay.
There's things that people you run into throughout your career when you're doing something for 20-some odd years. Almost 30 now, God help me. And Bill Jemas was actually the editor on that series of cards.
That's right, because he did like some consumer product stuff, right? At Marvel before he was.
Apparently he fell in love with my stuff then, which, you got to question his judgment. But like 5 or 6 years later is when Ultimate Spider-Man popped up, and that's why he was insisting on me, because I turned that book down 3 times.
Interesting.
And yeah, because you run into things like Dan Buckley's now publisher of Marvel. He's been there for I think 10 years as publisher or something like that. And I had lunch with him and Joe Quesada a few years ago, because I get up to Marvel maybe every 3 or 4 years, if that. And he's sitting across the table, and he goes, Mark, he says, do you remember me? I said, no, should I? He goes, I was your line stopper in San Diego like 16 years ago.
Line stopper?
Yeah, he was working the con,
like
and
he capped
he capped
he's like
my line.
I'm the last person in line.
I said, was I nice to you? He goes, why the hell do you think you're still working for us? So, you know,
Wow.
it's like,
Let that be a
it's
lesson to any
yeah.
convention, employees,
Anybody
volunteers.
kick on the way up, they're going to kick your ass on the way
you could be
down.
the publisher of Marvel Comics.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway.
So speaking of the Clone Saga, you actually weren't there through the whole thing because it overlapped a little bit with the start of Thunderbolts, right? So you exited at some point. Yeah.
I exited. It was some company stuff going on where I was having trouble getting actual work. I had a contract with Marvel, but the editor-in-chief wasn't crazy about my work, which was chilling. People hiring me for other books, and by the time I left Amazing Spider-Man, I was actually ready. I mean, it was well past ready to leave, but I couldn't really land on anything else. And I did a Star Trek tie-in comic book, and I did some online, a little online comic, which nobody ever saw.
The Marvel Cyber Comics?
Yeah, and then Kurt Busiek, God bless him, kind of, brought the idea of Thunderbolts when, the Image guys took all the Marvel characters.
Heroes Reborn.
Right, and Harris tried to talk him out. Bagley, you want somebody hip and hot and cool and new. And he said, no, I want somebody who'll freaking draw my books and get it in on time and tell the story. So that was me. And so the Thunderbolts, and I took that first issue, and I was really in a bad place. In fact, I reminded Tom Brevoort, the editor of the book, and I said, you actually sent pages back to me that told me to do some backgrounds because I was so burnt out. I went a couple pages without really doing the backgrounds I should do. And he's the first one who really ever called me out on something like that. And I was like, okay. But by the end of it, I was like, I was getting stoked again. And
I bet.
We had a blast.
Yeah, it seems like an exciting book to work on. It's certainly an exciting book
blast.
as a reader. It was very unique.
Yep.
Told a very cool story. I don't know how many of you guys read Thunderbolts. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's funny because...
Naked Moonstone. Yeah.
Meteorite.
Meteorite, Moonstone.
And because that first issue, obviously, I think Marvel is able to pretty much successfully keep the surprise under wraps. The first, the end of, this is a 16, 17-year-old spoiler, but the end of the first page that the Thunderbolts are really the masters of evil.
They are? No shit. Yes.
Which seems like, in this day and age, it seems like you probably couldn't do that.
We got a Wizard Award for it. Woohoo! So, yeah, it was fun. It was a fun book to work on.
And you stayed on it even after Busiek left. You were on it with Fabian.
With Fabian forever,
for a little bit.
Yeah. I did 50 issues of that, so.
It's another long run.
No. Yes, it was a long run.
And speaking of long runs, it was all a precursor to the longest run ever in Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah. Brian and I, 111, 114, something like that, issues. And I did. I turned that book down 3 times. They came to me.
Were you skeptical about?
Well, John Byrne had just done
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1, which went over like a fart in church. I mean, it was like bad.
And that was literally just like 2 years before.
Yeah, it stunk the place up. Fans hated it for every reason that they should have. And I was like, and Bob Harris brought it to me. Bob Harris was the editor-in-chief who I knew didn't like my work. And I was like, he doesn't really want me doing this. And, I turned him down. It presented to me as a 6-issue limited series. And so I turned it down. He brought it back. And about the 3rd time he brought it back, he said, look, he didn't really say this, but I was always looking for more than 1 book a month because I could do more than that to fill in the edges. So he said, look, you don't take this, you're really not going to get any extra work. I mean, he didn't say it, but it was implied. It was like Tony Soprano, And so I took it, and I had never heard of Brian. I get the script, and it's like this freaking thing. It's a double-sized issue. But I think it was the first time I really worked full script with anybody. And I'm looking at this script, and I'm like, what the hell? And he's not even in costume in the first issue? What the? And I really didn't get it.
Right.
And so I'm drawing it, I did the best job I could feeling the way I felt about it. And I think I did a pretty good job. People like it. But it really took me 4 or 5 issues to start really kind of getting it and liking it and enjoying it. But I was still leaving after 6. And this turns into a pretty good story. I was still leaving after 6, and I'd finished the 6th issue when the first issue came out, or maybe I was finished like the 5th issue, and I was pretty far ahead. And the first issue came out, and everybody seemed to love it. It was on great paper. It looked great. Cliff, the guy who gave the tryout books, he said, look, dude, you got to stay on this book. Well, the day before, I'd actually officially declined because they'd called me and said, we're going to make it an ongoing series. We'd like you to stay on. I said, no, I don't think I'm going to. And literally, I think within a day or two, Cliff was like, when the book came out, was like, you need to stay on this book. So I called him back and called Ralph Macchio, the editor, back. I said, hey, if it's not too late, I'd like to, stay on the book after all. He goes, oh, thank Christ. He goes, Bill Jemas is so pissed. He said, who effing fired Bagley? So we didn't, he quit, I swear. But the punchline to the story is like a couple of years later, a year or two later, I think I may have been here in Seattle. I'm in Seattle, right? Yeah.
Believe so.
These things run together. Yeah, and Leonard Kirk was here. I'd never met Leonard Kirk, and he's a really good artist.
Yeah.
And he comes, and I didn't want to be, I was in a bad mood. I'm cranky. I'm an old guy, so I get cranky sometimes. I'm starting to use the word peckish. And
Great word.
yeah.
Descriptive.
So I'm sitting there in the lobby having to go to the con. Maybe it was Sunday morning. You know how tired us guys get on Sunday, and maybe a little hungover to it. And down comes this, into the lobby comes this little guy. And I mean, I'm not exactly a big guy, but I was in the Army and I lifted weights. I was, I could kill you with a finger, especially with my gun.
You could and might.
But he comes in, and he says, it's kind of this short, kind of little round guy. And he says, you Mark Bagley? I said, yeah. He says, I'm going to kick your ass. And he said it just serious enough where I was just like, I stood up and said, I said, okay. And he goes, no, I'm just kidding. Turns out they had called him and offered him Ultimate Spider-Man. And then like a day later called him back. And he thought they were calling him back to say they wanted him on it sooner. And they called him back and said, oh, by the way, Bagley's decided to stay on the book. So I felt bad for him, like, but it's happened to all of us in the business.
Sure.
So.
And things have worked out for
things have worked. Leonard's doing just fine.
Current artist on Fantastic
Four. For a no-talent hack, yeah. No, he's very talented. He's very good. So.
Absolutely. And I think an interesting thing with Ultimate Spider-Man, I think something you became known for of being adept at was drawing younger characters in that book, because Peter Parker and Mary Jane were obviously much younger. Yeah, and they didn't really age very much. Yeah, during the course of that book.
I still feel really bad. I drew her without panties once. I just feel. It's this one scene where they're standing side by side, they're about to hug, and I think it was during the Venom storyline, and she's reached up to go around his shoulders, and she's wearing just a long shirt. She was in her bedroom, and I've got the cut of the shirt comes up to about here on her hip. Clearly no panties, and I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. That was just wrong,
People at home, go through your long boxes.
I swear.
Look that up.
I think they did it that night, but Brian would say no, so we'll just leave it at that. But young love, first love, you know that. But yeah, I love working on that book. I mean, I did. We'd go 4 or 5 issues without him in costume, and I wouldn't even really notice. It probably cost me $100,000 in art sales over the last 10 years, because you get quite a bit more money for a page. It's got Spider-Man on it, as opposed to like 9 panels of talking heads. But
that's what made the book so special.
It was a blast. I love that book.
And from my perspective as someone who's obviously been a fan of yours for a long time, it seems like your art style did.
Yeah.
Your art style did evolve.
Oh yeah, it's always evolving.
Yeah, and it seems definitely with Ultimate Spider-Man that was, even though it was Spider-Man again, it was a very different Spider-Man. Was that easy for you?
It was freeing to do it, because actually the Peter Parker design was done by an artist named Adam Polina before me. I think maybe they offered it to him before me. I don't know, but they sent me this drawing of young Peter Parker with the funky hair, and and Adam has actually gone on. I think he does fashion now or something. Seriously, he's a good artist. But the idea, when I was doing Amazing Spider-Man, I just never. I love doing the book, but you're working on other people's characters. You got Gil Kane, you got John Romita's, you got these beautiful renders of how these characters are supposed to look.
Iconic, classic stuff.
No matter how well I drew them, I never felt like I was actually drawing them well. I just felt like I was drawing them as well as I could. You know?
Yeah.
And with Ultimate Spider-Man, I could, they were I considered them my characters, so I could draw them. So I draw them as well as anybody could, because they're. And I had that sort of ownership feeling. So
well, after 111 issues, I would imagine.
It was fun. I still, like, when I started working on some things I didn't get was when Brian started talking about the Green Goblin and no costume. I'm like, no costume? Just a superhero comic with no costume? What the hell? Stuff like that. It took some getting used to, but after a while, it was a dream.
Yeah, and you got to redesign pretty much every classic Spidey villain in there.
More or less.
Or a lot of them.
You can't really, it's like Kingpin.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kingpin was pretty consistent.
Funny story about Kingpin is I'd never really drawn Kingpin before. It's amazing. And so the one thing about drawing a really, really heavy man, heavy fat person, I guess, is the neck.
It's all muscle.
Well, yeah, but the neck, there's the jowls and the neck, it's really different. So we just really gone online. And like I said, this has got to be, what now, 18 years? No. 12 years ago, 15 years ago?
Yeah, around there.
So we had a computer, but never really done online stuff or anything like that. So we just really started doing that. It was really the first image search I ever did online for anything. I typed in Fat Men or Fat Man. And this is before a whole lot of filters are there. This is before Google. You wouldn't believe the shit that popped up by the third picture. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, no, no, no. And these things are getting spammed, you know, and it's like, oh my God. My daughter walked in the room, get out!
Just from Fat Man. Wow.
I mean, I stayed away from that for a long time. So thank God for Google.
The sacrifices made for your art.
Exactly. But it was helpful.
I bet.
Yeah. Anyway.
And then after the long Ultimate Spider-Man run, I believe there was a bit of a time spent at another company.
I left Ultimate Spider-Man because I just felt like it was... In fact, I left Marvel because I felt like, you know, I love Marvel, and they'd always treated me very well. But you get too comfortable someplace, you know, the old expression, squeaky wheel gets the grease, you know, and they sort of lose appreciation for you. And there wasn't anything overt, although my wife would get just ticked off as hell at some things. So I just felt like it was time. It would be good for my career to go, you know. And I've always had a hankering to draw Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, and you know.
And you got to do all of that.
I got to do all that, you know, and with Trinity, but which turned into everything but Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. And suddenly, Batman's a god, and I was like, I love Kurt Busiek, but I was like, what? What? No, okay, he's a god. I'm drawing Batman as a god. Okay, this is good. And then I did Batman for a while, a couple issues.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed those 4 issues. Then I did JLA.
JLA.
So, and I really enjoyed the 4 issues of Batman. And about that time, my contract was up. And Marvel came calling and said, hey, we want you to kill Peter Parker. I'm like, yes, all right.
Well, I do think it's interesting that your first book at DC was a weekly, because you had been known, obviously, as a fast artist.
Oh, killed me.
But then, you know, going from, I think it was usually about 18 issues a year of Ultimate Spider-Man, right? It was more than monthly, but then to go from that to a weekly, I know there were backups and stuff that you weren't, you know.
Yeah, well, I did half a book weekly.
Yeah,
so
but that's still a jump.
It worked out to 2 full books a month, really. And I'm not as fast as I used to be. I don't work as hard as I used to. I don't work 80 hours a week anymore. I work about 60.
Slacker.
Well, it's an easy 60. I mean, I get up, you know, I'm in my jammies, I have my coffee, I sit down, I work. I don't have to spend an hour at lunch. I don't have to spend an hour driving into work or driving home. You know, if I work, take a couple hours off in the day, I can work in the evening.
Sure.
I love my job. You know, 2 o'clock in the afternoon or so, I usually put on a pair of jeans and go out and get the mail. Because I think a grown-ass man should have pants on when he goes to get the mail. In the
pants on by 2 p.m.
Exactly.
Pro tip.
That's right.
Wear pants by 2 p.m. You heard it from
Mark Bagley. My daughter,
Mark
when she
Bagley.
was 8, came to me and said, Dad, you know, because I got in this habit of working in just my bathrobe and jammies.
Sure.
And the bus stop was up at the top of the hill right by my studio. And so after about 6 months, my daughter, who's 8 years old, comes up to me and goes, Dad, you know those weird guys in the neighborhood people talk about? I said, yeah. He says, you're becoming one of them. Would you get dressed? You know, she's always been kind of precocious. So anyway, so I just, the Trinity was a great opportunity, and it was really interesting to do, and we had enough of a head start where I got like a 12-issue head start on it, so I was able to be, but by the end of it, man, it was like we were turning pages around like this. And Kurt had the last couple of issues was like these huge fight scenes where literally one called for a double-page spread with 82 bad guys. And I'm pulling my hair out because you couldn't rewrite it. There wasn't any time.
Right.
And I'm thinking, why weren't you thinking about what I have to freaking draw? I said, I can draw this, but I can't draw it well. Turns out I did draw pretty darn good, actually. But I was so tired by the end of that.
And, you know, obviously you're known as a fast artist. You say you're not as fast as you used to be, but still I would say faster than most, certainly. I mean, it's hard for a lot of artists just to do 12 issues a year, and you obviously can do more than that. Was that something that's always been fairly natural for you? Or did it come
when I first got into comics, and it was true, somebody said you had to do 3 or 4 pages a day to make, I think I said this already. You had to be able to do that. Now, granted, you know, back in the day, the quality of the penciling that was expected was different than now. The amount of detail, because they didn't have the time, because it was such a trade as opposed to more of an art form. Not that they couldn't have done it if they had the time. They certainly could have. You know, Gil Kane and John Buscema and those guys. Right. But it's amazing the amount of work the quality of the work they did do. But I just, you know, and once again, I'd still love to draw too. I mean, I get up every morning. You know, in fact, I was talking to Joe Rubenstein. He's like, you know, some mornings you just get up and you go, God damn it, you gotta go draw. I said, no, there's never. You know, it's like I just get up every day. I get up and I just, you know, sometimes on a Sunday afternoon, especially got a condo in Florida where I go help my parents, and you know, it's Sunday afternoon. I don't have a yard to work in, so I'll just spend a couple hours at the desk just tooling around. A, it's making me money. B, I'm loving doing it, and you know, don't you leave? How dare you? Oh man, the Hulk is leaving. Bye, Hulk.
Chew my toes too big.
Yeah. This is Mark Bagley, artist of Hulk. Hulk is leaving.
Yeah, but I gave you a
Cool
huge
irony.
package. Come on. So, yeah. I don't even know what that means. All right.
Well, we won't dwell on that too much.
No.
But so, obviously, the project that brought you back to Marvel was Death of Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man,
Yes.
Ultimate Peter Parker.
I cried.
Was it an emotional thing?
Oh,
for
there
you?
were tears shed. There was.
I imagine
literally
it
there
was, yeah.
When I read the script, and I think I called my wife to tell her about it, and trying to tell her about it over the phone, I literally choked up. You know, the whole part when she's laying there going, I couldn't save Uncle Ben, but I could save you. You know, it's like, I just was like, and I'm a guy. I mean, you know, I'm a guy. You know, I'm sort of,
Sure.
I'm not like you, you know.
No, I cry at nearly every comic book.
But yeah, it was really good. It was really good. And then there was the aftermath of the death where there's this. I don't know if any of you guys read these books, but
They read them. Come on, Death of Spider-Man.
Aunt May's
Come on.
going into St. Peter's Cathedral with Tony Stark, and they're walking in, and a little girl stops her, and she's got a hat on. She's got some burns on her face. And she says, you know, are you Spider-Man's mommy? And she goes, no, but you fixed him dinners and stuff. Yeah, it says, well, he saved me from a fire, so I didn't die. Well, oh God, I tried to tell that man. And the little girl in the comic is actually my granddaughter, PJ. And you see how sad she looks in that comic? Well, PJ's a goofball. I mean, she will not stop smiling, you know. And so she wouldn't stop smiling for some pictures I was trying to take of her. So her mother told her that we were canceling her birthday party. I did not approve. I wasn't there when it happened because they emailed me the pictures of her.
I love that.
So anyway, that's her, and she's being held by my daughter, and my son-in-law's there. For some reason, they called him Latin. I don't know why. There's nothing wrong with that, but every shot of him, he's Latin. I mean, he's got, you know, it's just funny. But yeah, that scene is like, he tried to tell that, you know, fire didn't save me from a fire, so I didn't die. You want a hug? You know, it's like, oh God. But it's good stuff.
That was a great scene, and obviously your partnership with Brian Michael Bendis has been A, long one, and B, one that stretched out not to just Ultimate Spider-Man, but to Avengers Assemble for a little bit, and your first ever creator-owned work. Brilliant.
Issue 5 came out last week.
Just came
Or
out.
something like
Find it on the convention floor if you haven't gotten it.
Yeah.
And
sorry it's taken so long.
so Brilliant is a unique thing, obviously, for you. It was your first creator-owned book. Was that something you had been hoping to do, or did Brian kind of talk you into it? What was the process like there?
This is funny because, you know, was that me? I'm sorry. When I left Marvel, I had been talking to Kurt, DC, nothing official because I was on a contract. And I wasn't going to talk to anybody official. And I was trying to figure out how to do it as upfront as possible without pissing anybody off because I don't want to burn any bridges. And so it come to the point where I really made some verbal commitments. I said, yeah, I think I'm done. And yeah, they'd sort of started planning Trinity, that sort of thing. And so I started getting calls from Marvel about, hey, well, you're going to leave. Yeah, can we offer you some more money, that sort of thing. And they offered me, like, you know, my wife was like, if they'd offered you this kind of money first, you'd have never left, you know, because she gets aggravated. And Brian calls. He goes, you know, I got this creator-owned thing. I said, Brian, why didn't you tell me this 6 months ago, you know? Jesus. Because when he explained it to me, I was like, this is really exciting, you know? And I said, well, I cannot, you know, I can't renege on the deal. Right. And because I made sort of commitment. And he says, okay, I'll hold it for you, which I thought was shocking. And sure enough, he held it for us. And it's been an interesting experience, you know.
Interesting how?
Well, I'm not as fast as I used to be, and I'm having to go down to Florida, you know, drive down 9 hours one way once or twice a month now to help my parents out because my dad's got Alzheimer's and my mom can't see, and, you know, it's the whole train wreck of getting old. And so I can't quite do the amount of work I used to do. So Marvel is my main, you know, I mean, that's my bread and butter, and that's, so Brilliant was always going to be something on the side, but you know, 10 years ago, I could have done Brilliant on the side at a pretty good pace, you know, and kept it coming out every month or every other month or something like that. But I can't now, so that's why, between that and Brian getting so busy with everything he's doing, you know, I mean.
Writes a couple books, yeah.
That's why it's been like 9 months to a year between issue 4 and issue 5. And if there's ever more evidence of books need to come out on a regular basis to really hit their market and hit their target, it's that because, you know, I mean, it so hurts the sales of the book, even though it's Brian and I who, if we were on anything else in the business, would be selling
Doing quite
great,
well.
you know? So, you know, it's just the nature of the beast now.
Still must have been an interesting experience to do your first creator-owned
Oh, it's
book.
fun. Yeah, it's
and a non-superhero book. You know, there's superhero-ish elements.
Because I like drawing real things, I like drawing real people and clothes and cars and stuff like that. And there's the superhero thing in there. And if we do sell it to somebody and make a few bucks, that wouldn't be too terrible either.
No,
you know?
Definitely not. You guys probably have some questions. I've been hogging all this time. Who has a question for Mark Bagley here? Right there, front row, Venom is back T-shirt.
Has there ever been a time that there's something you had to do the art for, but you didn't like the story itself, but you at the same time you had a lot of fun doing that art?
A lot of times I'm surprised. The question is there a time when I get a story that I have to draw and I didn't like the story, will I still have fun drawing it? Quite often I won't. Quite often you just kind of force yourself to get it done and get it drawn if it's something you don't like. But a lot of times I'll read a script and I'll read something that's happened and I'll go, God, this is going to be a pain in the ass, and not be looking forward to it. And 9 times out of 10, once I start drawing it, I find it a challenge and I find it fun, and you know, I really, you know, those kind of sections. If it's just something stupid, then yeah, you just kind of go, you got to draw this damn thing, you know. And you know, when you're having fun, it tends to go faster. You know, a lot of things are like that. So, any other questions?
Batman shirt, yes.
Hey,
What would you say to someone that was trying to get into draw comics, you know, that wants to start getting into your profession?
don't.
Questions about getting into comics.
Get into anime. No. If you want to get into comics, if you want to be an artist, you know, if you want to be a writer, artist, inker, the whole 9 yards, there's so many ways to do it now. It's ridiculous. The younger guys, you know, between podcasts and web comics and, you know, working for video game companies first before they actually break into the mainstream, it's so different than when I was really trying to break in. You know, my advice to you as an artist would be to just draw your ass off. You know, I mean, I was doing construction in Georgia with a wife and a kid, thinking that's what I was going to be doing. But my wife swears I was coming home every night and drawing for 2 or 3 hours in the evening, just practicing. If you look at my stuff back then, I needed it. But you know, I joined the Army so I could afford art school, and I went to art school. I didn't take comic art. I mean, Joe Kubert had just opened his school, and I couldn't see really investing in that narrow a focus, you know. And so I took fine arts because the idea of doing advertising, I'd rather pound nails for a living, because at least you're outside enjoying yourself. Advertising's a whole different kind of pounding nails. So you know, just draw, and don't just draw superheroes, and don't just draw tattoo designs. Draw, you know, cars and women and, you know, trees, and you know, and then learn how to tell a story, because there's guys who draw their rings around me, but they can't tell a story to save their lives. And there's nothing that kills a comic more than looking at it going, Jesus, this is boring, you know. So
Definitely. Yes.
Is there anything that you had to bug Bendis to let you do an Ultimate Spider-Man?
Anything you had to bug Brian Bendis to let you do?
no, not really. I mean, I pretty much let Brian write. I would get the full script, and if there was something I wanted to switch up or change or whatever, I generally did it without asking him unless it was something major. His scripts are pretty fully realized. I mean, by the end of it, I was like, if he ever, you know, computer writing, the programs now for writing that these writers have, they can reinsert paragraphs and things over and over again. The one thing I got sick to death of seeing was outside of the high school, and he'd have the same paragraph, and it was like 10 lines of, it's outside the high school. There are 30 buses, 250 students running around. Typical high school madness. This sort of, and I'd read that again. I got to draw more goddamn buses. I gotta do this. You know, that sort of thing. You just want to, but no. I think over the course of the 6 years or so that I worked with Brian on Ultimate Spider-Man, I think I redrew a total of like 2 pages worth of stuff. One was an entire page where we'd had a big explosion going off in New York City. That was scripted, and drawing was during the Doc Ock thing. It was one of the first story arcs. And I'd drawn it. It hadn't been inked yet. I still have the page. And 9/11 happened. And we both went, you know, I don't think we can have a big explosion in New York City right now. That would be bad taste. So we had to do I had to redraw that. And that wasn't me, so my fault. But there was another double-page spread a year or two later where I was just burnt out, and I was a little tired, and Brian had this specific thing. It was an X-Men crossover thing where their plane is crashing, there's stuff going on. And he all ended up, after this double-page spread, this one little point of the Marvel girl using her telekinesis to hold, I forget whom, off the ground. I don't remember, but I was just, nobody's perfect, and you get tired, and sometimes you can think of, sometimes I'll change something just because I know I can make it better, I can make it sleeker or whatever, but this is just me being lazy, and so I did something different, and it worked just fine. But Brian called me and says, I really had this idea for this to be this. And I was like, my bad. So I redrew it, and that's the kind of collaboration we have. That's when you have good collaboration. Every now and then you work with a writer who's just a prick, and it's like, shut up, leave me alone, I'm going to draw.
And let's name names for the live stream right now. No.
I did have one guy call me up drunk at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, drunk off his ass. And he lives in California.
Okay.
And he starts talking to me like a 12-year-old schoolgirl. I love your stuff. How can we stay together working forever? And he's like, oh, my God, he's drunk. It's 12 noon where he is. Names will not be named on this one. It was a long conversation.
It sounds very
It was fun.
emotional and awkward.
Come to my table. I'll give you the dirty details,
I think we probably have about 10 minutes left. Any more questions from the audience?
All right.
Yes.
What inspired you for your designs on the characters in Ultimate Spider-Man?
Inspired the designs for the characters of Ultimate Spider-Man.
Well, sometimes it was descriptions from Brian, like the vulture I designed. He said he looks a little bit like Jason Strahan, and he's got an armored, flying suit, and so I designed a bald guy who looks like Jason Strahan and an armored flying suit. Other times it's just like it wouldn't be any real description, but he's like I think Electro was something along the lines of just this weird-looking bald dude. So I drew him, and I drew him with no ears actually, because I figured when he first got his powers, he sort of burned his ears off and scarred his face, and it was my idea to put him in sort of a rubber suit because he doesn't quite have control of himself. But plus I wanted to make it a little bit like a costume because I still wasn't getting the no costume thing. It's just how it hits you. Usually when I do costume designs, usually the first one I come up with is usually the best one. Black Cat, I redesigned Black Cat.
Black Cat, hello.
Hello, Black Cat.
Right in the front row.
Black Cat. I did my best not to give her the whole cut down cleavage down to her navel. I just did. I thought, that's been done. As much fun as that is to draw, it's been done. So I gave her this full black leather suit. I actually gave her a tail that I thought could be prehensile. And I went through 4 designs on that. And finally, they kind of insisted, no, we want the cleavage. In fact, during the Clone Saga in Ultimate Spider-Man, there's a clone of Peter Parker who they turn into the Scorpion. Turns out he's got this tail grafted on. Well, Brian didn't want the Scorpion to have a tail. And he sent the script to Joe Quesada, and Joe Quesada's like, dude, he's the Scorpion. He's got to have a tail. And Brian's like, no, I don't want him to have a tail. And he's like, dude, he's got to have a tail. No, I don't want him to have a tail. So Brian calls me whining about it. I said, Brian, I'll design it so he doesn't have a tail. He was worried with it just looks stupid, the tail coming out of his butt like the Scorpion,
Sure.
Well, I designed it sort of on his back and coming out of his back like a Scorpion. I mean, no harm, no foul. So, and then he's reintroduced the Scorpion in Ultimate Spider-Man with Miles Morales, and he doesn't have a tail. He's just some Mexican guy with tattoos.
He finally was able to.
Yeah, Joe
held on to that for 14 years.
Probably snuck it past Joe when Joe was sleeping or something. So.
It's interesting. Obviously, subsequent versions of Spider-Man have taken so many cues from Ultimate Spider-Man. As recently as we're seeing, the movie that's coming out in a couple months, and the Electro has visual cues.
Oh, the Spider-Man costume's totally based on mine.
Yeah, definitely, very
I'm not
much
making
so.
that up.
Yeah, no,
I've talked
absolutely.
to producers. I've done drawings for the movie. I won't get credited for anything like that. It's just stuff you do. You wouldn't believe the amount of background to all these films are. It's just amazing. And the producers, they used my which is, I don't get any money for it, and probably won't get any recognition in the movie for it, but it's kind of a compliment.
It's cool. It's very recognizable, certainly. Yeah.
The first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, when they're going through those pictures, and Robbie and J. Jonah are going crap, 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 and they find one and go, ooh, that was in Ultimate Spider-Man. One of the first few issues. I was like, I totally drew that. So that was kind of exciting. So.
Excellent. Any more questions? How much time do we have? Maybe 5 minutes, guys. 5 minutes. Yes, X-Men.
My least favorite character to draw? I think we crossed that bridge already, the Carnage. Venom's a close second. Actually, Venom's okay, but doing sketches at a con of Venom, it's really hard to do him fast because he's got all that black and everything, But, most drawing is just construction. It's just, you know, you get, it's just building figures. It's building, you know, and so unless it's incredibly complicated and just, you know, tedious, then I have fun drawing almost anything, you know. And to me, it's all about the characters are not just these comic book characters. To me, they're the actors in the film, in the movies we're making. So it's, when I was doing JLA, the most fun in the world I had was drawing Power Girl and Supergirl, because they're basically supposed to be the same character, but Power Girl's got these enormous things. You know, and
not quite sure. I'm not quite sure.
You guys have heard the Wally Wood story, why her breasts are so huge. This is a true story. Wally Wood was a great artist and did great women, but this was near the end of his actual life and his career. He was kind of a drunk. And they gave him, Power Girl was a backup story in something or other. And he determined he was going to draw her breasts bigger every issue until they stopped him. And this is a true story. And about 7 issues in, they said, stop. You know? So but it was still, it's so much, that's the acting of it. It's drawing, this waif of a little Supergirl next to Power Girl. And I did, JLA, I was drawing Jonah, Troy, and Power Girl and Supergirl. And just the body types and just the body language and that sort of thing. That sort of thing is geeky fun for a guy like me, you know.
I think you just delivered a bonus to this panel, the secret origin of Power Girl's breasts.
It's not a secret. It's well known in business, you know. So.
Speaking of, not wanting to sketch Venom at cons, who do you get requested the most at these shows? Who do people want you to draw?
Spider-Man, of
Spider-Man?
course. Yeah, Spider-Man, of course. And I do a lot of Spider-Man. I do a lot of Spider-Man, but I do a lot of everybody. I mean, and it's always fun. And the fun sketches are the ones where they come up to you, we want a zombie Spider-Man, or we want, can you draw me Galactus, or can you draw me something, that you haven't drawn in a while? And that's always you always get the best sketch out of that, because you tend to work harder on it.
Right.
I drew Winter Soldier for the first time today, and must have spent a half an hour on it. Then I realized
cool, yeah.
I drew it on a regular sheet of paper that I do my sketches on, and I realized the guy had given me a book, a cover book, a sketchbook cover book. He'd given me a sketch cover book to do it on. I'm like, oh God, I just did the wrong thing. So
you can bind it in.
I know. I gave the sketch to a kid and redid it, but it's fun.
Any final questions in the last few minutes? Spider-Man, you must have some good questions for Mark Bagley. I can only imagine.
What your favorite version of Peter Parker is, because in Ultimate Spider-Man, obviously, he's young, he's a teenager, he's in high school. But then back when you were doing Amazing, I mean, he was a man. He had a job.
He was a grown-ass man. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's.
I said that in my daughter's high school class last week. It's a grown-ass man, and she was like, "Oh God!" But I love Peter. I mean, I just did a little interview thing for some book they're doing. It's a retrospective book, and they just wanted a few sentences of why I thought Ultimate Spider-Man's lasted so long and done so well. And I think the core of it is the fact that we kept him when Brian told me we could keep him as a 15-year-old and not change, not age him. Yeah. I was like, you can't do that. I mean, I'm a typical fan reaction. He's got to grow up. He's got to, no, he's still, until we kill him, he's still a 15-year-old kid. Nobody cared. But it was, I'm embracing this sweet, innocent 15-year-old kid who just gets his nuts kicked by the world, And that's, to me, the fun part of it. The second Peter Parker got married to a supermodel, as a character, it lost it for me. Much of the interest went out the window, because I was a geeky little kid. A lot of us were, And, the idea of all of a sudden you got all this stuff in your life that, we had a good run on that. Good question, Spidey.
Spider-Man, that's good introspection there that you were able to ask that question. And I think Ultimate Spider-Man did have a birthday at like 85 issues in. I think there was like a birthday issue, right? There was something in there somewhere,
I don't think
right?
he really had a birthday.
There's something there. Towards the end.
It is?
Towards the end. After.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Well, I think we need to wrap up, but Mark, thank you so much for your time and your insight.
Thank
you guys for the great questions. And your work can currently be seen on Hulk with Mark Waid.
First issue comes out next week.
Next week.
Yes.
So go out and get that. And that's your first time working with Mark Waid?
Yes, it is.
Which seems crazy because you guys have both done
hilarious.
so much stuff.
3 months before, we were at some con on a panel and going, we've never really worked together. Yeah, I'd really like to too. And like 3 months later, it's like, hey, you want to work with Mark Waid? I'm like, yeah. The Hulk? Yeah. Does he have to have that stupid armor? No. All right, I'm in. So it's a good thing.
Excellent. So so Hulk #1 next week.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for coming. Thank you so much,
It was
Mark. It was fun.
All right.
What?
Those are bright.
Yeah.
That went all right.
I think so, right? Yeah. So much.
It was fun.
So much for not spending, however.
Really? You can spin around Too late now.
I will say, I think you've never heard this before, but I really love drawing
Anime?
Yeah.
Ultimate anime?
Yeah.
Thank you. I first designed it. The design note on it was like sort of an older Katie Couric. Back in the day, sort of a cuter older Katie Couric.
She looks like a cookie cutter old. I stopped by Babylon about 2 years ago.
Well, well. I shall bestow a gift on the child. Before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, she will fall into a sleep-like death. Curious little biscuit. Bring her to me.
I know you're there. Don't be afraid.
I'm not afraid.
Then come out.
Then you'll be afraid.
All the other fairies fly. Why don't you?
I had wings once. They were strong. They were stolen from me. There is evil in this world. Hatred and revenge. I call on those who live in the shadows. Fight with me now!
Is it true? Hear your accent.
We got one scene up here.
Hey y'all, thank you for coming to this small theater panel. If you guys could fill in any empty seats, I know most of you guys already did, but there's some empty seats back there. Could fill all those in, that would be fabulous. It is a very small room, so if you have any cell phones, I ask that you turn them off or silence them. It would be fabulous. We are recording, so you don't need to. In fact, please don't. Still photography is fine, but no plastic. If you do leave during the panel, please make sure that the door doesn't sort of slam on your way out. Be careful with it. I think that's it. Have a great show, or hope you had a great show.